while walking out one evening, not knowing where to go, just to pass the time away before we held our show.
In 1872, 4 years before the Battle of the Little Bighorn, William Wesley Van Orsdel arrived in Montana Territory at Fort Benton without a penny in his pocket and in debt for his riverboat ticket. The adventurous Methodist minister did have his Bible, though, and a head full of gospel songs. He used them like calling cards wherever he went, singing for his supper and a place to sleep. Van Orsdel's rather unwieldy name was among the first things to go after he arrived from his childhood home in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Montana's settlers did not stand on formality and quickly took to calling him simply Brother Van. The name stuck.
When Jesus comes to claim us all and says it is enough, the diamonds will be shining no longer in the rough.
Hello, I'm Dr. Art Uline. Brother Van's singing was legendary in the Montana Territory. Wherever he traveled, people welcomed him into their homes, and children would climb onto his lap for a story. A lifelong bachelor who had always hoped to have a family of his own, Brother Van loved the spontaneous joy and innocence of the children he met. Then, as now, however, not every home was a happy one. As he visited the mining camps and ranches of frontier Montana, Brother Van saw the suffering of children. In 1909, he decided it was time to challenge it. In so doing, he planted the seeds that would ripen into the remarkable institution we know today as Intermountain. He enlisted a group of women dedicated to the well-being of children, the Methodist Deaconesses. Ellen Baumler of the Montana Historical Society tells the story.
The Deaconess movement spread across the United States in the 19th century. It was a Protestant movement that countered the Roman Catholic sisterhoods, and it offered women an opportunity to have careers when women didn't usually work outside the home. So in 1909, when Brother Van was looking to found a school in Montana, he looked to the deaconesses to help him organize that and staff it. Deaconesses were trained nurses, they were trained teachers, they were trained in social work, and they were wonderful, dynamic women who seemed perfect to staff a school. They could do all the things that were required, including tuck the children in to bed at night. And so Brother Van invited a very dynamic woman, Louise Stork, to come and help him initiate that project.
In 1905, Louise Stork had come west in response to Brother Van's plea for help with the Deaconess Hospital in Great Falls. Trained in social work at the Chicago Training School, Stork and a group of 5 other deaconesses were now given the task of opening the state's first Methodist boarding school for children. The site for the school was the abandoned Wesleyan University campus north of Helena, a previous attempt by Brother Van to bring Methodist education to Montana. The university had been derailed by the Panic of '93, when the trolley line that serviced the fledgling university went bankrupt. In 1908, the building stood vacant and had fallen into serious disrepair. Over the summer, Louise Stork and her staff worked day and night to rehabilitate the decrepit campus. By the fall, the school was accepting both day and boarding school students at the modest price of $20 a month. This is all that's left of the original Montana Deaconess School. It was damaged by an earthquake in 1935 and never reoccupied. Fortunately, no children were hurt. For 26 years, it had provided shelter and education for some of Montana's least fortunate citizens. Now, the children would be housed with private families until the school moved to its new home in 1937. Mills Hall on 11th Avenue in Helena, currently occupied by the Montana Department of Corrections, had housed the Intermountain Union College, a later incarnation of the old Wesleyan University. But from 1937 until 1971, it was home to thousands of children, casualties of the Great Depression, World War II, and the dislocations of post-war America. By the time the school moved out of Mills Hall, it would have a new home, a new name, and an emerging model for helping children. Intermountain's new campus opened in 1971. It was built around 4 residential cottages, each housing 10 children and a trained counselor. On-campus classroom facilities marked the resumption of an educational curriculum for the home. From its earliest days, the Deaconess School had attempted to give each disadvantaged child a safe, loving place to grow up until a permanent family could be found. But there had always been kids who seemed to be beyond the reach of what the school could offer. In 1982, based on a new understanding of what troubled children really need to heal and grow, Intermountain focused on the depth and quality of a child's relationships with safe adults. On October 6, 1982, Intermountain opened its new intensive treatment cottage. As its name implied, this is where the children most in need of radical intervention would live. Here, they could forge the kind of relationships with strong, loving adult role models that most children take for granted from their birth parents. This relational philosophy would prove to be one of the only therapeutic models that could consistently pull severely emotionally distressed kids back from the brink. Today, Intermountain has demonstrated the power of its therapeutic model for transforming young lives. It serves 10 times more children than it did just 13 years ago. Yet its vision extends beyond what can be accomplished for a relatively few children lucky enough to participate in the residential programs.
In the late 90s, we began our PATH adoption program, and that came out of a very strong conviction for us that children need permanence. And we found very clearly that it did not matter how well we did in treating the children in our campus program, that children really regressed if they did not have a permanent, trustworthy, and stable home to go live in. And so permanence for us in adoption became a very, very critical part of our philosophy and our approach to families and children, and it remains that way today, that permanence is everything, and the ideal form of that is adoption.
Intermountain's success is founded not on abstract theories or therapeutic models, but on the real difference it makes for real children, on whether it can save lives. Several years ago, I brought a boy here because he was in desperate need of help, and I had been entrusted with his care. Trevor was incredibly bright, but lost in his rage at the way life had treated him. Some had given up on him, but not Intermountain. He spent 2 years here, and when he left the program, his life had been saved. John W. Whitehead said, "Children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see." For 100 years now, Intermountain has worked tirelessly to send messages of hope to our own future. And though Brother Van probably prayed that 100 years after he called us to the task, there would be no children left to rescue, sadly, that is not the case. The good news is that today we have a better idea than ever before of what it takes to help these precious innocent children. As Intermountain enters its 2nd century, we can all be grateful for the vision of a Methodist minister, the hard work and loving diligence of a small group of women who took up the cause, and for a new generation of clear-sighted caregivers and educators, unwilling to let a single child fall through the cracks. As a doctor sworn to alleviate suffering, and as someone who has been personally uplifted by the work done here, it's a pleasure to add my voice to the chorus of those wishing Intermountain another century of success. I'm Dr. Art Uline. He sang for white settlers and Native Americans alike, who respected his courage and honesty, occasionally inviting him to join them on hunting forays. Here, Charlie Russell depicted one such outing. Sometimes Brother Van had to sing to soften up a particularly tough crowd. Once down in Raidersburg, he was taken for a notorious outlaw who was rumored to be heading that way. Leaping onto a wagon, he launched into a string of his favorite hymns. When the rifle-toting townsfolk eventually emerged from hiding, he introduced himself and was given a much warmer welcome. "I saved a man's life once just by my singing," he later told people. "My own."